She shook her head and decided that maybe she was overreacting, which was possible, since she'd had such a horrendous day at work. Right now, anything would have stirred her nerves, and it wasn't fair to take her frustrations out on the children, especially since, for the most part, Ashley and Nicholas were exceptional. They were obedient, intelligent, and had wonderful personalities. She loved her children, and most of all, she was proud of them. Proud because, even though they hadn't been born with silver spoons in their mouths, or with the stability of a two-parent household, they were better mannered than some children who've been blessed with all the financial advantages. Marcella slid the key in the front door and opened it. They all walked in one by one. Ashley shut the door behind them, and they each kicked off their boots so they could dry. Marcella opened the hall closet, hung up her black wool scarf and charcoal gray winter coat, and then reached for Nicholas's and Ashley's outer garments. "You two have any homework to do?" Marcella asked, closing the closet door. "I don't, Mom," Nicholas quickly offered, with a huge smile on his face. "Good. Then that means you can go work on those spelling words so you'll be ready for your test on Friday," Marcella responded back to him. "Oh, Mom," Nicholas said, replacing his smile with a pout. "Go on. I'll be in there to test you in a bit." Marcella knew if he didn't have anything constructive to do, he'd spend the rest of the evening glued to the Nickelodeon channel. Too much TV wasn't good for anyone, and it especially wasn't good for an 8-year-old little boy. "What about you, Ashley?" Marcella asked. "I have some math homework to do, but I finished everything else in class," Ashley answered and headed toward her bedroom. Marcella smiled to herself, because at that moment she saw something in her daughter that she hadn't seen before. A 10-year-old version of herself. She'd been the very same way when she was growing up. She loved school from the very first day in kindergarten and all the way through her graduation from high school. Ashley was a straight-A student and was clearly following in her mother's footsteps academically, which was fine. But when it came to falling hopelessly in love with some little boy, Marcella prayed that Ashley would find her own path to follow. Because the last thing Marcella wanted was for Ashley to end up pregnant, the way she had during the last month of her senior year in high school. It wasn't that she didn't love her daughter, or both of her children for that matter, because she did. But she could kick herself 1,000 times for not being more careful when she started having sex with Tyrone. She'd loved him from the very first moment she laid eyes on him during their sophomore year. He, the school's top football star, and she, the girl voted most likely to succeed. The world had been theirs for the taking. But without even having the sense to know it, they'd ruined everything. Marcella had received acceptance letters from colleges and universities all across the country. But she'd had no choice except to decline each and every one of them. She tried hopelessly to overcome this irreversible mistake, but now that almost 11 years had passed and she was 28, her efforts to do so still didn't seem to be working. Marcella dropped down on the leather-like beige sofa and leaned her head back. She closed her eyes and rested them for a moment. When she opened them, she gazed around her apartment. The desperately discounted furniture, dull-looking mini blinds, and second-hand wall portraits were disgusting, and now she was even more depressed than she had been earlier. No matter how hard she tried, she was still barely making ends meet. Her salary alone just wasn't enough, and the few food stamps she received each month never seemed to last more than 2 weeks. And the only reason they lasted that long was because of how conservative she was when it came to buying meat. If it hadn't been for her mother and sister, she wasn't sure what she would have done. They helped her out financially whenever she needed them, and they went out of their way to show Ashley and Nicholas how much they loved them. Marcella could wring Tyrone's neck. Sure, she'd been just as much at fault for not using the diaphragm, IUD, the pill, or something.